First half of January 1943. Everyone is scared. Every night hundreds of planes pass over Holland on their way to German cities to sow their bombs on German soil. Every hour hundreds or maybe even thousands of people are being killed in Russia and Africa. No one can keep out of the conflict. The entire world is at war, and even though the Allies are doing better, the end is nowhere in sight. These are 13-year-old Anne Frank's thoughts on January 13, 1943, while she is locked away in hiding from the Nazis in Amsterdam. This is War Against Humanity, a series of World War II in real time. I'm Spartacus Olsson. Today we will let Anne Frank's diary entry for that day guide us through the war against humanity. Among other things, we will see how she writes of how fortunate they are in their Dutch hiding place to have food when many go hungry. And as we look back at the end of December 1942, we see that this situation is by no means restricted to the Netherlands. In some places it is not hunger, but famine. The worst hit areas are on or near the front lines like Ukraine, Henan, China, and Bengal, British India. Also, as the year ended, a year-long trickle of information revealing the Nazi genocide of the Jews culminated in a flood of revelation that, as shocking as it was, didn't even come near the actual scope. A genocide that German Führer Adolf Hitler, Reichsführer SS Heinrich Himmler, Reichsjustizminister Otto Thierack, and their willing helpers then expanded to anyone and everyone they consider undesirable. Or should I say, convenient to make disappear, as it now includes Polish civilians living in places that the Nazis want ethnic Germans to get. And forced relocation or deportation for the gain of Germany is also on Anne Frank's mind when she writes, "The Christians in Holland are also living in fear because their sons are being sent to Germany." And they are sent en masse. The pressure on the German war machine is dragging on the economy. Last month alone, Hitler ordered the conscription of 300,000 German into the Wehrmacht. The labor shortages are further exasperated by Nazi ethnic labor policies that have excluded parts of society from the workforce. The solution is to add more slaves. On January 1st, Fritz Sauckel, the slave master of Europe, requests a further 250,000 French laborers for the German workforce. On January 12th, during a meeting in Berchtesgaden, Pierre Laval, Prime Minister of the Vichy French puppet regime, promises to send another 400,000 skilled workers to Germany. The measures will be met by resistance from the French, causing big delays to meet the numbers. Another way for the Germans to fill their fields and factories is by extracting as much labor from the large group of disposable Jews whose fate has already been signed. In December, Himmler instructed Gestapo leader Heinrich Müller that the police is expected to deliver 45,000 more slaves to the concentration camps. Müller scrambles his forces, urging them that every single worker counts. He manages to find 45,000 Jewish workers in several ghettos in Eastern Europe, 30,000 from the Białystok district, roughly 10,000 from Theresienstadt, and some other from Western and Central Europe. However, Müller reports to Himmler that the vast majority of the workers are unfit for work and are instead gassed on arrival. So instead, police jails are emptied and workers punished for discipline violations are deported to the east. Miners suspected of being partisans in the Generalgouvernement and occupied Soviet Union become apprentices in the Auschwitz and Majdanek camps. Anne writes about the razzias to round up these people destined for slaughter by labor. Terrible things are happening outside. At any time of night and day, poor, helpless people are being dragged out of their homes. They're allowed to take only a knapsack and a little cash with them, and even then, they're robbed of these possessions on the way. Families are torn apart. Men, women, and children are separated. Children come home from school to find that their parents have disappeared. Women return from shopping to find their houses sealed, their families gone. In 1942, roughly 40,000 Jewish people have been deported to the labor camps and extermination factories in occupied Poland. A large majority of them have obeyed the calls to report for labor service. But the Nazis had hoped for more volunteers. To make up the deficit, people are violently abducted from the streets of the Jewish districts in Amsterdam or simply taken from their homes. Until now, those considered Jewish who are already in Nazi-led labor camps on Dutch soil or in hospitals, orphanages, or caring homes have been left alone. But Ferdinand aus der Funden, head of the Central Office for Jewish Emigration in Amsterdam, reporting to the Reich Security Main Office, Eichmann's department, is impatient. Roughly 100,000 Jews remain in the Netherlands, the majority of them out in the open. Funden and his superiors want them gone. This month, 5 more transports will leave Westerbork to Auschwitz-Birkenau. On 11th of January, for example, a train leaves with 750 Jewish prisoners aboard. On arrival, an SS officer triages them on the platform. The majority, 561 people, are led straight to the gas chambers, while 88 men and 101 women go to the Birkenau work camp. But even for those selected as slaves, prospects are grim. Mortality rates are so high that on December 31st, one of the Reich Main Security Office officials asked the concentration camp system leader Oswald Pohl, "What is the point of all these arrests if so many new prisoners die so quickly inside the concentration camps?" An exchange that reveals the reality of the tensions in the higher Nazi echelons. Some want to squeeze every single drop of sweat out of the Jewish people before murdering them. Others can't wait. On January 9th, Himmler visits the Warsaw Ghetto. He is infuriated to see that roughly 40 to 50,000 people perceived as Jewish with working permits are still alive there. Himmler orders SS and police leader of the Warsaw area, Ferdinand von Salmen-Frankenegg, to liquidate the remaining people in the ghetto by February 15th. 8,000 will be murdered in Treblinka already the very next days. Only 16,000 people working in armament plants are to be left alive and relocated to a concentration camp. This development rattles those who have until now believed that a worker designation would save them from extermination. Their worries are compounded as news spreads of more such ghetto eliminations. Like when on the 4th, the Częstochowa ghetto, a small act of resistance by some members of the Jewish fighter organization, triggers heavy reprisals, with 300 children and women sent to the Radom ghetto and then onwards to be gassed to death, along with 4,500 Radom Jews. While the situation in Poland looks hopeless, and Amsterdam Anne writes of her hopes that the Allies know what is happening and will come to her and everyone's savior soon. They do know, and know more every day. On January 11, British signal intelligence intercepts a German Enigma-encoded message. They decrypt it, but don't immediately understand what they're reading. It's a message from Sturmbannführer Hans Höfle, SS and police leader in Lublin, to Adolf Eichmann and the security police leader in Krakow, Franz Heim. It lists the 14-day report for Operation Reinhard for the last 2 weeks of December. It says L, 12,761, B, 0, S, 515, T, 10,335, totaling 23,611. It also has the total situation of December 31st, 1942. L, 24,733. B, 434,508. S, 101,370. T, 713,555, totaling 1,274,166. What the British have in their hands is the report card for those taken to Lublin, Majdanek, Bebshech, Sobibor, and Treblinka. The kill tally is based primarily on railway data, and the number of human victims is underestimated. But the Germans have handed the British hard evidence of the murder of close to 1.3 million Jews in less than a year's time. On January 7, U.S. President Franklin D. Roosevelt delivers his State of the Union speech and gives voice to their resolve to bring to the enemy their own medicine. He announces the increased bombing of Germany and Italy and says,
"We believe that the Nazis and the fascists have asked for it, and they're going to get it."
Roosevelt clear words as to the responsibility for this war is met in Germany with a press campaign to discredit the Allies and paint them as the criminals responsible for this war. The Nazi-controlled media lays on heavily with headlines like, "The madman in the White House wants to wash himself clean of his blood guilt," or "Roosevelt's most evil attempted falsehoods." The SS conclude in their reports that the press campaign sometimes has the reverse effect on the Germans. The headlines are so polemic that some smell something fishy, expressing that such loud protest might be a sign that the Allies have a point, or as the SS put it themselves, "struck dogs bark especially loud." But one thing is bringing resolve to the German people according to the SS, the bombing of their cities by the Allies. Because, as Anne noted already now, every night hundreds of planes pass over Holland on their way to German cities to sow their bombs on German soil. But according to the SS Situation Report, as much as it devastates the immediate victims, it has been found not to break the German people's morale and resolve, but to harden it, an effect that the Allies also noticed in Great Britain during the Blitz. Nevertheless, the Allies will increase their strategic bombing efforts. On January 14, a secret conference between the United Nations begins in Casablanca, Morocco. It has been 2 months since the Allies landed in North Africa, and it's time to determine the further course of the war. Indy explains more about this in his weekly episodes, but some bits are relevant to the further course of the war against humanity. The British and the Americans are the two major parties at the conference, especially as Soviet de facto dictator Joseph Stalin has chosen not to attend. The Western Allies agree that the Battle of the Atlantic must be won, that the invasion of the European continent will be inevitable, and that the bombing campaign must be intensified. The British will focus on carpet bombing and night raids, and the Americans will attempt their precision bombing strategy during the daytime. It will be total destruction, only to stop with unconditional surrender. The idea is not only to starve Germany's morale and resolve, but to destroy her resources. It's going to be an uphill battle for sure. Germany is big. Bombing in 1943 is imprecise and inefficient. Rebuilding production lines is fast, and a lot of war production has already moved underground and into bunkers anyway. Even if it might work, partly the Nazis have a remedy at hand: more slaves and plundering the occupied lands. Actions that are already now creating suffering for the people under occupation or siege. Winter has come, and with it comes hunger. Last year we saw the civilian population of Leningrad starve to death. Despite the siege, this year is slightly different. Through starvation and evacuations, Leningrad has been reduced to 1/5 of its original population. Furthermore, food rations are higher thanks to smuggled-in supplies and food supplies produced in the city itself. Also, this winter isn't nearly as bitter as the one in 41-42. Nonetheless, the Leningraders continue to suffer under the siege and its bombardments, and the food rations do still have much to be imagined. On the 12th, Stalin launches Operation Iskra, a relief effort that under the Soviet system is not viewed as certain by the inhabitants. Leningrader Vera Imber writes in her diary on the 16th, "Ordinary siege life goes on, but everyone is waiting. Nobody says anything. Nobody dares to, in case a wrong word gets to wherever our fate is being decided and changes it all. I'm perplexed and bewildered. I can't find a place for myself. I try to write and can't." But hunger is no longer just for the besieged. The German plunder of the European economies and lands now impact all who live under the swastika. Anne writes how the children in this neighborhood run around in thin shirts and wooden shoes. They have no coats, no socks, no caps, and no one to help them. Gnawing on a carrot to still their hunger pangs, they walk from their cold houses through cold streets to an even colder classroom. Things have gotten so bad in Holland that hordes of children stop passers-by in streets to beg for a piece of bread. As of April 1941, practically everything in the Dutch diet has been rationed, even rudimentary things like potatoes, milk, sugar, cheese, bread, butter, you name it. Partly it is the result of world trade coming to a halt. In case of the Netherlands, the flow of goods from its colonies. Meanwhile, the Germans are milking the Dutch economy. They have seized materials, machinery, food stocks, and laborers. The hardest hit are the ones without any way to secure ration cards, people in hiding without money or a network, or orphaned children whose parents have been abducted by the Germans. Still, though, the situation in the Netherlands is not quite as dire for everyone as Anne perceives. Rations are low, but have been relatively stable throughout 1942 and still is in the winter of 1943. The situation in other parts of the world is, however, different. In China, the ongoing famine in Henan is claiming thousands of lives every day, and a similar famine in Bengal, India, is brewing. Relative to all the suffering that is going on, Anne counts her blessings. As for us, we're quite fortunate, luckier than the millions of people. We're still safe and unbothered and are what you may call eating up our money. We're so selfish that we talk about after the war and look forward to new clothes and shoes when actually we should be saving every penny to help others when the war is over, to salvage whatever we can. But as 1943 begins, that war is nowhere near an end, and Anne seems aware of how much patience is still demanded of her young existence, and that it might be, in the end, futile. I could spend hours telling you about the suffering the war has brought, but I'd only make myself more miserable. All we can do is wait, as calmly as possible, for it to end. Jews and Christians alike are waiting. The whole world is waiting, and many are waiting for death. Never forget.